Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. We're past the halfway point of the year, which means that it's time for the all-important midway review of 2019 in terms of what are my best and worst movies of the year. Going to be starting off on a positive note with my best movies before introducing another video talking about the movies that haven't been so good this year. But generally, on the whole, it's been a very interesting year. It's been a very mixed bag in terms of the summer, and so there have been a lot of box office disasters. In 20th Century Fox has famously struggled very, very badly, having been amalgamated by Disney and so on. But there is plenty to admire. So I thought I would jump in at number 10 with Birds of Passage, which is the film from Colombian director Chiro Guerra, who in 2016 made Embrace of the Serpent, which was a incredibly atmospheric kind of Amazonian odyssey movie, very, very, very interesting, and sort of was really announced Chiro Guerra to be sort of onto the world stage. And now he returns with Birds of Passage, which is basically the story of the emergent Colombian drug traders told through the perspective of an indigenous family living out on the plains of Colombia, who over the course of the years are seen to accumulate more and more materialistic wealth and sort of material gains through their dealings in a drug empire. This is a really, really interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. It sort of fuses the kind of sweep of something like The Godfather or Goodfellas with an absolute authenticity regarding the setting. The beautiful costumes that are swaying in this sort of near constant breeze. You get a really tactile sense of environment and also of familial corruption coming right the way down through the generations. Really good film. Chiro Guerra is one of the best directors working in cinema today. Can't wait to see what he comes up with next. So in at number 10, Birds of Passage. And in at number 9, we have Avengers Endgame, the first blockbuster on this list. I mean, what more needs to be said about Avengers Endgame? The culmination of 11 years of the MCU, also the culmination of the two-part Infinity Saga that began with Avengers Infinity War. I mean, bearing in mind that it's been pretty heavily trailed and heavily discussed, I'm not going to go into specifics, like spoilery specifics about what I liked about it. Suffice to say, in a general sense, it's everything that I wanted from a blockbuster movie in the 21st century. It has a real sense of legacy. You get a sense everything has built up to this, and the Russo brothers, directors, know exactly how to pay everything off, both in terms of it being really emotional and also really funny. There are lovely nuances. There are nuances in amidst the kind of wibbly wobbly sort of time travel structure, which doesn't really hold up to scrutiny. But frankly, when the movie is this fun and when you're this invested in these characters, who cares about that? There is a running gag about Back to the Future, actually, about how the time travel theory in Back to the Future doesn't hold up, and quite frankly, it doesn't. Just a really good sweeping sort of culmination. Again, I come back to that word culmination. Goodness knows where the MCU is going to go from here. I don't think they're going to make a movie this momentous now, in terms of with this much legacy behind it, for quite some time. So in at number 9, Avengers Endgame. And in at number 8, Fighting with My Family, which is Stephen Merchant's feature film debut as a solo director, working with Dwayne Johnson about the true story of Norwich wrestler Sarai J. Bevis, brilliantly played by Florence Pugh, who's one of the most exciting actors coming up through the ranks at the moment. She was just recently seen in Midsummer, which almost made this list but didn't quite get in there. She is really plucky and sparky and gives as good as she gets as Sarai Jade, who comes from these relatively humble Norwich beginnings, makes it big in WWE in America, is kind of in two minds as to where she wants to end up. She is torn between loyalty to her family and this kind of emergent career. Dwayne Johnson turns up and makes what could be seen as a bit of a self-gratifying cameo, but which I think is really funny. Really terrific performances from Nick Frost, Lena Headey, and Jack Lowden, who are, as the family, who are all really, really funny. The sort of fusion of Steve Merchant's inherent deadpan humour with the irony that Dwayne Johnson has brought to many of his projects creates a really unexpectedly funny mixture, and it's really uplifting, funny, sweet. It's got a tougher edge than I expected, which is good. There's grit under the fingernails. It's not just funny and frothy. There is a tough edge to it, particularly with Jack Lang's character. So in at number 8 is Fighting With My Family. And at number 7, a recent entry, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is literally has just come out over here in the UK, where I'm from. So Quentin Tarantino's 9th movie, although there is some obfuscation to this as to whether you count Kill Bill's 1 and 2 as 2 movies or 1 movie. Quentin Tarantino seems to think they're 1 movie, even though the fact that obviously we had to pay for 2 movies. But never mind. Let's put all that aside. This, as with all Tarantino's movies, offers so much to digest that it really needs a good day or 2 days to settle. But unlike a lot of Quentin Tarantino's recent movies, which I felt had interesting ideas but were incoherent and overlong, I actually thought this was his most straightforwardly satisfying movie since Jackie Brown. Certainly in terms of the sobriety that most of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood features. There's a lot. It touches on male insecurity, male loneliness. It's a romanticised vision of the dying days of the golden age of Tinseltown in 1969 as the Manson murders were rising up. Brilliant performances from Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, and also a largely wordless Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate goes absolutely mad in the last 20 minutes in a way that I think is troubling, but is in pursuit of a point. I think it's not interested in gratuitous splatter like something like The Hateful Eight was. It's going to get everyone talking. It's going to divide people. Indeed, it already has divided people. I thought there was a lot to praise about it. Robert Richardson's cinematography is, as ever, beautiful. The soundtrack is kind of envelops you in this warm glow. You are going to talk about it, but I think unlike a lot of recent Tarantino movies, you're going to talk about it in a way that is constructive and interesting. So in at number 7, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And number 6, an interesting one, Gloria Belle, which is the movie from Sebastian Lello, who adapts his own Chilean film, Gloria, only this time it's an English language remake starring Julianne Moore as kind of middle-aged divorcee who's just kind of drifting through life, sort of looking for some kind of purpose, looking for any kind of happiness that might come her way, and that she doesn't seem to be necessarily burdened by this. She has children. She's kind of broadly optimistic, and then there is this emergent relationship with a character played by John Turturro that kind of goes into unexpected and somewhat dark directions. I mean, I think as a showcase for Julianne Moore, this is perfect, and it's incredibly uplifting and incredibly honest. And how nice it is to see a movie that is grounded in something approaching kind of visceral, tactile reality, particularly in terms of relationships, because God knows we get enough bad movies out about relationship dramas that come out that just aren't realistic whatsoever. I thought this is carried shoulder high by Julianne Moore's performance. I really liked it. So Gloria Belle there in number 6. And at number 5, back over to the UK, we have the Scottish drama Beats. Now, I absolutely love this. It's from director Brian Welsh. It's a black and white Scottish movie set in the mid-90s, about around the time in Britain when there was a crackdown on illegal rave culture, and it focuses on two teenage friends who are on the cusp. One of them comes from a rough family, another is sort of relatively more stable. They're about to go. They're about to diverge. They're teenagers on the cusp in life. They come together, and in order for one final bonding session, they share in their love of rave music at this illegal rave festival. I thought this was absolutely superb. I really went in with absolutely no expectations whatsoever, and it really got the sense of camaraderie between the two friends brilliantly. It is nostalgic, but I think it's nostalgic in a way that is not lazy. It doesn't use it as a crutch. It really is an eye-opening sort of look at Britain back at that time. I would recommend it. I would recommend you go and check it out wholeheartedly. So in at number 5, it Beats. And in at number 4, another sort of coming-of-age movie, 8th Grade, this time American film. So Bo Burnham, who's probably best known, he's a musician and stand-up comic turned feature film director in this. He's probably best known for his appearance in Trainwreck, the Kamal Nanjiani film from a couple of years ago. Just takes the story of a young character played by Elsie Fisher, who is brilliant. What talk about a breakout performance in this, who is a teenager who has ironically enough has a YouTube channel, and she finds everything that she can almost sort of haltingly express on her YouTube channel, she is cripplingly unable to express face to face with her peers, with her father, who is a single father raising her. It's a really astute coming of age comedy. It really gets that sense of awkward adolescence absolutely brilliantly in with a way that is really honest and ultimately very moving and very funny. Actually, it's been a while since I've seen a coming of age movie that is, I thought, this astute. It's a very, very well traversed genre, but I think Bo Burnham, working with Elsie Fisher, really digs out some very, very provocative material in this. So in at number 4, Eighth Grade. And at number 3, going right the way back to the start of the year, you have The Favourite. So Yorgos Lanthimos' sort of awards garlanded pitch black period comedy thriller, however you want to say it. One of the brilliant things about this movie is how genre defying it is. It has the trappings of a 18th century Baroque period drama, but it absolutely does not play nice at all. It's incredibly misanthropic and dark and uncomfortable and very, very funny, like all of Lanthimos' films are. It sort of takes the template of the period, of the cost of the tedious, slightly waffling costume movie, and completely blows it apart with this element of really, really nasty, really scabrous, and for my money, really funny humour. Absolutely towering performances from Olivia Colman, who deservedly got the Oscar, Rachel Weisz, and in particular Emma Stone, who demonstrates a far nastier character than we're used to seeing her playing in this. I thought, what a brilliant use of a historical context to explore the relationship between 3 women. And it's interesting, it's a historical movie, but it's very much got a kind of modern contemporary philosophy behind it. Again, it's not a costume drama that is interested in convention. I think, frankly, all the better for it, frankly. Mary Queen of Scots came out around the same time, which I think fell into the trap of being a very conventional, not very interesting drama. This, by contrast, is far, far more engaging, gripping. In at number 3, The Favourite. And at number 2, we have Minding the Gap, which is a very, very interesting documentary feature, sort of shot piecemeal style over 12 years by a debut director, which does this really quite extraordinary thing, almost akin to Richard Linklater's Boyhood, which is it starts off with these 3 teenage friends in a somewhat impoverished American small town that's kind of, its best days are behind it. These 3 guys start off, they have dreams, they have aspirations, and then the movie follows them piecemeal style over the course of the movie. And the movie then gets more complicated, it gets darker. As they grow up, their lives become more complicated, and it starts off with them bonding over their love of skateboarding culture. But then they gradually reveal more about themselves. There are kind of reversals in terms of how we interpret these guys, in terms of what they've said versus what we know about them. There is an extraordinary on-camera confessional with the director and his mother, which is really incredibly powerful and very upsetting. I think this was a really, really remarkable documentary. One of the great things about being a film reviewer is when you watch something and you don't necessarily expect anything of it, and you don't know anything about it. And this absolutely is that. This absolutely blew me away. Go and see it if you can. In at number 2, Minding the Gap. And so, number 1 choice, it is Jordan Peele's Us. It's just absolutely brilliant. I was thinking about the extraordinary success of Get Out recently, just how phenomenally successful Get Out was on its $4 million budget. It made something like $250 million. Obviously, it won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. The Golden Globes sort of seems to pigeonhole it as a comedy. There was a black comedy about race relations, but it was also a horror as well. Us is similarly genre defining and similarly proves that Peele is one of the most exciting filmmakers to have emerged in recent years. He does a brilliant job of keeping the audience wrong-footed throughout, while also embracing lots and lots of his sort of movie frames of reference that he really likes. I mean, there's bits of funny games in here. I think there's bits of Candyman. It is ostensibly a home invasion movie that balloons out into this really radical and quite vicious, and I think quite brilliant satire about America as a whole. The scope is wider than it is in Get Out. Jordan Peele has said Us isn't necessarily a movie about race, as Get Out was. This is a story about America, and there is a pun in the title which obviously certainly refers to that. What a barnstorming dual performance from Lupita Nyong'o. If she is not Oscar nominated next year, really there is no justice in the world. But as we know, the Oscars often make a lot of foolish decisions, so I wouldn't be all that surprised. Brilliant score from Michael Abels, whom I've interviewed twice now for Get Out, and I see he is an absolute joy to speak to, and you can hear that enthusiasm and that creativity coming through in his vocal inflected work in this. It'll leave you with so many questions. It left me with so many questions. I'm still turning the movie over in my mind now, nearly 6 months after it came out. I think it's the most ambitious and exciting movie that I've seen this year. In at number one, Us by Jordan Peele. If you haven't seen it, you're really denying yourself a treat. I can't recommend that you go and watch it enough. So that's my top 10 of the year. So now I want to know what your best and worst films of the year are. Drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll see you soon. Bye.